Ethan Cole had always found comfort in the rhythm of baking, the way flour dusted the air like snow, how the steady hum of the oven filled the silence that used to ache after his wife passed away. But tonight, the bakery didn't feel like a refuge. It felt like a stage, and he was the fool waiting for a curtain that might never rise. He'd closed shop early, something he hadn't done in years. The last of the customers had left before sunset, carrying away boxes of croissants and cinnamon twists. Now the display case gleamed empty, reflecting the soft amber lights that hung from the ceiling. Every table had been wiped twice, maybe 3 times, though no one would notice but him. He was nervous, ridiculously so, for a man who'd faced burnt loaves, supplier delays, and single parenthood without blinking. He checked his watch. 6:45 p.m. He was early. But wasn't that better than being late? His sister would tease him if she saw how he'd combed his hair and changed into a clean white baker's coat, the one without the coffee stains. She was the one who had arranged this blind date, said the woman was someone kind, someone who deserved a man like you. Ethan had laughed when she said that, pretending not to care, but his heart had stirred. It had been years since he'd even thought of dating. In the corner, his daughter Lily sat at her usual spot, swinging her legs and humming to herself. She had a smudge of chocolate on her cheek and a crayon in her hand, drawing something on a napkin. The smell of sugar and vanilla clung to her clothes, the same way it did to his. "Daddy, are you excited?" she asked, not looking up from her drawing. "Maybe a little," he said, trying not to smile. "Are you scared?" He thought about it. "Maybe a little of that too." She nodded like she understood everything. "You shouldn't be. You're nice. She'll like you." He chuckled. "How do you know that?" "Because everyone likes you," Lily said simply. Then, after a pause, she added, "Even grumpy Mrs. Henson. She only yells half as much now because you gave her a cupcake." Ethan laughed out loud, shaking his head. "That's not how you measure kindness, kiddo." "Maybe it is," Lily said wisely. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. She smelled like sugar and warmth and the safe little world they'd built together. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But by 7:10, the bakery felt too quiet. The clock ticked too loud. The empty chair across from him began to look like a judgment. He'd poured 2 cups of tea already, one for himself, one for her, though the other cup was still untouched, steam curling upward and vanishing into the still air. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she'd seen his photo and decided he wasn't worth showing up for. He wasn't the sort of man women lined up for. He was a baker with calloused hands, a tired face, and a life built on 4 a.m. alarms. His romantic stories had been replaced by bedtime ones, read to a little girl under a blanket fort made of flour sacks and old sheets. He sighed, glancing at Lily. "Looks like it's just us tonight, sweetheart." "That's okay," she said cheerfully. "More cookies for us." He smiled at her optimism, but the disappointment settled somewhere deep, quiet and heavy. He didn't blame the woman. Maybe she was just busy. People like her, whoever she was, probably lived lives that didn't leave room for small bakeries and tired single dads. At 7:22, the door chime jingled. Ethan looked up, startled. The bell's soft ring filled the silence. A small girl stood in the doorway, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with dark curls bouncing around her face and a pink tulip clutched in her little hand. She looked both nervous and determined. "Hey there," Ethan said gently, crouching a bit so he wouldn't tower over her. "You okay, sweetheart? Are you lost?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No, sir. My mom's coming." She took a tiny step forward, holding out the tulip like it was something precious. "She said to give you this. And she said, she's sorry she's late." Ethan blinked. The words sank in slowly, like honey pouring into a cup. "Your mom," he echoed. "Yes." The girl nodded. "She said I should tell you not to leave." Behind the counter, Lily perked up. "Hi, I'm Lily. Do you want a cookie while you wait for your mom?" The little girl's face brightened at once. "Okay." Ethan stood frozen for a moment, trying to piece it together. He turned toward the door and saw a sleek black car parked just outside under the streetlight. A driver had stepped out and was opening the back door. And then he saw her. She was taller than he expected, wearing a fitted coat the color of ash, her hair pinned up neatly though a few strands had escaped in the breeze. There was something about the way she moved, graceful but hurried, confident but human, like she wasn't used to being late and didn't quite know how to apologize for it. Even from a distance, Ethan could tell she wasn't from this world, not his small, flour-dusted one. As she stepped into the bakery, the little bell chimed again. Her perfume mingled with the scent of baked bread, soft and subtle. She smiled, a little out of breath. "Mr. Cole?" she asked. Her voice was warm, professional, but there was a hint of nervousness behind it. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Emma's costume for her school play tore, and I had to fix it before we left. I didn't mean to keep you waiting." Ethan straightened instinctively, wiping his palms on his apron before realizing how ridiculous that was. "No worries. I've got good company," he said, glancing at Lily, who was proudly sharing a sprinkle-covered cookie with the other girl. The woman followed his gaze and softened. "Seems our daughters are faster at making friends than we are." "Looks like it," he said, smiling. Her shoulders relaxed, and she laughed, a genuine, tired laugh that lit up her face. For a second, she didn't look like someone who arrived in a chauffeur-driven car. She looked like someone who'd been running on too little sleep, doing her best, trying to hold it all together. "Thank you for waiting," she said quietly. "It's been a long day." He nodded, his smile turning gentle. "We all have those." And then, for the first time that night, he felt something shift. The empty seat across from him didn't feel empty anymore. The air didn't feel still. The world didn't feel small. Two little girls were laughing over cookies, and two adults, each a little broken, a little tired, were smiling across a table that suddenly felt like the start of something neither of them had expected. Ethan looked down at the tulip in his hand, pink and trembling slightly from the child's grip. It wasn't much, a small thing, a fragile thing, but as he placed it carefully in a glass of water, he realized it was enough. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was wondering what might come next. The bakery was closed to customers now, but it was far from quiet. Laughter echoed from the counter where two little girls, Lily and Emma, were engaged in what could only be described as a cupcake war. Frosting smeared on noses, sprinkles flying everywhere, and giggles filling the space that had once been silent. Ethan watched them from behind the counter, a smile tugging at his mouth as he poured 2 mugs of coffee. Samantha Hayes sat at the corner table, watching her daughter with a mixture of amusement and something softer, something like relief. Her dark hair, once perfectly arranged, had loosened into gentle waves, framing her face in a way that made her seem more real, less polished. She looked nothing like the photos Ethan had seen online when he'd Googled her name out of curiosity, a powerful CEO, all sharp angles and power suits. Tonight, she was just a mother trying to remember how to breathe. He brought her the coffee and set it down gently. "Careful," he said. "It's hot." She smiled faintly. "I'll try not to burn myself. Though I think my daughter's already claimed most of the injuries tonight." Ethan followed her gaze. Emma had frosting all over her hands, and Lily was earnestly trying to show her how to use a piping bag properly. The result was chaos. Beautiful, sugary chaos. "They're having the time of their lives," he said quietly. Samantha nodded. She hasn't laughed like that in a long time. Her voice wavered slightly, like it was admitting more than she intended. "It's been a hard year." He leaned on the counter. "For both of you." She looked at him, eyes deep and tired. "Yes. Divorced as that." He didn't flinch, didn't pity her. Just nodded in understanding. "Yeah, life has a way of kneading people down before letting them rise again." That made her laugh, unexpectedly. "Did you just make a baking metaphor about heartbreak?" He grinned. "Occupational hazard." For a moment, the world felt lighter. They sipped their coffee and listened to their daughter's chatter. Lily was explaining how to make heart-shaped cookies, just right, while Emma was trying to convince her that more frosting was always better. Samantha leaned back, watching them. "I spend most of my days in boardrooms with men who talk over each other, who think profit margins are the only measure of success. And here I am, watching 2 little girls make a masterpiece out of sugar." Ethan smiled. "Sometimes the simplest things remind us what matters." She glanced at him, her expression softening. "You really love what you do, don't you?" He nodded. "I do. Baking's honest. You put something in, you get something out. You take care of it, it grows. You rush it, it collapses. There's no pretending." She looked down at her cup. "I can't remember the last time I did something that didn't involve pretending." There was a silence then, not awkward, just full. The kind of silence that hums with understanding between two people who have both been tired for too long. Emma broke it by running up to her mother, holding a cupcake piled high with pink frosting. "Mommy, look, I made you one," Samantha gasped dramatically. "That's beautiful. Did you make that all by yourself?" Emma nodded proudly. "Lily helped a little." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A little." Lily giggled. "Okay, maybe a lot." The adults laughed, and the moment felt whole. Samantha took a small bite of the cupcake and closed her eyes. "This might actually be the best thing I've eaten all week." "High praise from a CEO," Ethan teased. "From a very hungry CEO," she replied. "I skipped lunch." He shook his head in mock disapproval. "That's a crime in my book. You can't run a company on coffee and ambition alone." She tilted her head, amused. "And how do you run a bakery, Mr. Cole?" "Coffee and hope," he said. "Mostly hope." Something about that made her smile wider than before. "Maybe I could use a little of that." He looked at her then, not as the powerful woman from headlines, but as someone human. Someone who had fought too long to stay upright. "You're welcome here anytime," he said simply. The air shifted after that. Not romantic, not yet, just something gentle and honest. Two parents who'd both lost and rebuilt, finding comfort in the small things: laughter, frosting, shared coffee. The girls were sitting now, decorating their last batch, their voices slowing as sleep crept closer. Samantha reached into her purse, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "You know," she said softly, "I almost didn't come tonight. I've cancelled every blind date my assistants tried to set up in the last 2 years. I almost cancelled this one too." Ethan arched a brow. "What changed?" She hesitated. "Emma found the message on my phone and said I should go. She said maybe the person waiting would be nice." He smiled faintly. "Smart kid. She is." Samantha's eyes softened again. "And I think she was right." They sat quietly after that, watching the girls nod off at the table. The bakery had grown dim, the outside lights flickering softly against the rain-streaked windows. Ethan stood, gathering empty cups, and Samantha helped without being asked. "Most people I meet don't know how to slow down," he said. "You're doing just fine." She smiled. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all month." As they packed up to leave, Emma sleepily tugged on her mother's coat. "Mommy, can we come back?" Samantha bent down. "Maybe. Would you like that?" Emma nodded. "Mr. Ethan said I can help make cookies next time." Samantha shot him a teasing look. Did he now? He raised a hand in mock surrender. "She's a natural. Could use an apprentice." Lily yawned and leaned against him. "We can all bake together," she mumbled. Samantha laughed, her eyes glimmering. "You two are trouble." "The best kind," Ethan said, smiling. Outside, the city was quiet, the streets reflecting the amber glow of the bakery's sign. Samantha guided Emma toward the waiting car, but she paused by the door, looking back at him. "I wasn't expecting tonight to feel easy," she said softly. "Thank you for that." He nodded, his heart beating a little faster. "Anytime." She hesitated, then reached into her bag. The tulip her daughter had given him earlier still sat in a glass near the counter, its petals half open. Samantha took another one from her purse, a matching pink bloom, and set it beside the first. "For next time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He wanted to say something clever, something charming, but the words caught somewhere between his chest and his throat. All he could do was nod. As she stepped into the car, Emma waved through the window, her small hand pressed to the glass. Lily waved back until the car disappeared around the corner. Ethan turned back to the empty bakery, the faint smell of sugar and coffee still in the air. 2 tulips glowed under the soft lights, their stems crossing in the glass. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence. It didn't feel lonely anymore. For the first time in years, the night felt full, like something new was rising, slow and certain, the way bread does in the warmth before dawn.